All right, got my last appointment done and all packed up and ready to go. Next stop is going to be Starbase, also known as the gateway to Mars. It's where all the Mars missions are going to launch from. It's about a 21-hour drive, but should be pretty fun. It's about 16 hours, 17 hours with about 4 hours of stops for charging and whatnot. So it'll be the first road trip. We'll see how it goes. I'm excited. First road trip in the car. Gonna go see a rocket launch for the first time. And then after that, head up to Dallas to go see some United States soccer matches. And then back home. All right, wish me luck, everyone. So this video is going to focus more on the actual trip in the Tesla, what it was like using it, the supercharging, sleeping in the vehicle, stuff like that. If you're interested in some of the locations I went to on this trip, I'm going to have a travel video in a few days up, so look for that. I went all the way down south to Brownsville, Texas, the Boca Chica site to see Starbase and all the facilities out there. And the next day I saw Starship launch for the first time. Then I went up north to San Antonio, visited the Alamo, the Tesla Gigafactory in Austin, then the Luby's Massacre site in Kylene, and then real close by is the Branch Davidian compound location in Waco. Then after that, up to Dallas to see the JFK assassination site, the Grassy Knoll, the book depository, and then wrapped up the trip with 2 epic United States soccer matches, and then back home. So if you're interested in that kind of information, I'll have another video up. But, to start out with, this is my first trip in a Tesla. What was the supercharging network like? And was I going to have any range anxiety? So this was my first time using the supercharger network. I had tested it once in town locally, just because I didn't want to find out, like the first stop on my 2-week trip, that it wasn't working. Obviously, it worked fine. I have a home wall charger as well. That was working out just perfectly fine. The TLDR of it all is that it was actually a lot easier than I thought. I never really needed to worry about it on the entire trip. The only time I did have a little bit of range anxiety was when I was pushing it intentionally. But ultimately, what I did is before I left, I charged up at home to 100% instead of just like 80%. Charging at home, the electricity is a lot cheaper. Supercharged network compared to what it was for gas for me is about half the price of gas on a per mile basis. And then charging at home is about a third of what the supercharged network is. So I charged up at home just 100%. That extra 20% is extremely cheap electricity, cheap gas, so to speak. So in the car, the Tesla app works great. It always told me, what percentage I would end up at by the next stop, how long I'd have to charge there. And it did the entire trip. All I did is I put in my destination of Starbase, and it pulled up saying I needed 6 stops. And it even told me what percentage I'd have to charge at each. So it was really responsive. I could change my route at any time and it would recalculate. It works infinitely better than the Tesla website. I punched in the same location on the Tesla website where you can pick the vehicle you're at, which model of that vehicle, or like which trim and whatnot, and it would try to figure out based on what the range is, how many miles you can make it. And literally from Tucson, Arizona to Boca Chica down in Brownsville, the website, when you go to just tesla.com and go to the supercharging area and do like a route planner, had me going up all the way through Utah, Colorado, and then down through Texas. It was like a 57-hour trip. So there's definitely some bugs on that. I would not recommend. I've actually never used it since then. It was so crazy. The app in the car, though, flawless, and it's very responsive and very quick. Now, one note on range, out west, there's some pretty big gaps between supercharge stations. So, with a gas car, I would normally run my car all the way down to pretty much touch an E, because there was gas stations every other block in town, right? Every city you stop at, before and after and in the middle. So it's not really an issue. With the charging stations out west, like most of the nation, a lot of these stops are at gas stations already, but they're near interstates. So long distance traveling isn't really an issue. However, out west in some of the big gaps, I started to notice some issues in its estimated range and how far it thought it could get on what charge. And there was 2 different times where I had a 10% error, and
It's a pretty big difference. So, for example, like heading out east, there was one situation where it said I was going to end up with like 23%, and I ended up with 33% by the time I got to that charger where I was supposed to have 23. And then on the way back, 10% in the other direction. It said I was going to have like 19% at one stop, and I ended up with 9. Both those are okay. It's just it was pretty wild variance between those. But when I got closer to civilization, like near Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, where there was just chargers everywhere, the range was pretty spot on outside of that.
So 20 minutes into the 21-hour first part of the trip, the Jowua Sunscreen for the Model X had to go. The clips are not they don't work very well. The clips don't actually hold up the sunscreen very well. The sunscreen itself has tension to it, which is nice. Like the ones in the back on the Falcon wing doors on the top, you don't even need clips. They just press right in. But for the front, the clips just weren't very strong. It's like 3 or 4 millimeters of a lip, and so it kept coming down over in the corner. And then the one by my head came down, and I certainly didn't want to be driving on the interstate and have that thing fall right in front of my head, and I couldn't see. I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of the design just because I still haven't figured out how to fold it. And I've read their instructions, and I've watched somebody online do it. And when somebody says, fold it in reverse heart shape. Okay, what? How? I don't understand. Like, I may not be the smartest person, but I'm not dumb. Like, I can't figure it out. I'm sure I'll figure it out hopefully sometime this trip. And I got an idea to be able to fix it, to be able to use it where I don't need the clips. But, obviously if I was at home, I could have probably jerry-rigged something together, and I'll have to figure out the solution on the road. Otherwise, I'll just have the sun bake in my head, I guess. So yeah, not the biggest fan. Really disappointed because it seems like it has good reviews, and like I said, it fit the top of the windshield pretty well, but the tension's good. It does go down a little bit higher than, it goes down a little bit further than I want, but it's basically the same thing as far as if the car had a roof, like a regular car. I'd still be, blocked from that part of the view anyway, so there's not much difference there. And that I don't really complain about. I do wish it was maybe 3 to 5 inches shorter. So anyway, yeah, it's gonna just lay back there for now until I get to the next stop and maybe have a look at it. Since it's about 3 o'clock right now, the sun's behind me since I'm traveling east, so I'll be good for the rest of the night into the morning. And when the sun comes up, I should be heading south, so it's just going to be towards, my driver's side. So for the first leg of the trip, it probably is not going to be that big of a deal. Going home, though, when I'm driving west, if I'm facing the sun, that's going to be something I really want. So yeah, right now, I'm going to give it about 2 out of 5 stars. I'm still going to give it a chance, though. I don't know if this is the right way, but, it kind of looks like a reverse heart. I don't know, or a butterfly. It's close enough. I was able to figure out a way to fold it up. I don't know if it's the right way, like I said, but it's going to work so I can store it better. This is I haven't mentioned it earlier, sorry. The sunshade isn't staying up. The clips aren't working too well. I think there's an easy way for me to fix it. It's just not easy on the road, so when I hit up a Walmart tomorrow or some other time, I think I can get something that'll keep it up. I think it's an easy fix, but it was coming down, so I took it down pretty much 10 minutes into the drive, like just barely outside Tucson. So I just threw it in the back, but now I got it folded up. My first stop at Wilcox, I almost pulled a newbie Tesla owner, which I am, but I keep seeing on travel videos how people sometimes don't back up far enough because the cables are pretty short for the superchargers. Especially for like the Cybertruck, you got to get like every inch back as far as you can. Well, I almost didn't have enough room, and I realized that as soon as I click the button and get ready to plug it in, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to have to move, get back again. As if the people parked next to me really care. I got my paper plates on, they know I'm a newbie, but it connected, so that was cool. I only needed about 15 minutes there, I guess, because of the gap between here and Las Cruces. So I'm here at the Van Horn charging location, Van Horn, Texas. pretty interesting. When I left El Paso, it said I was gonna end up at 42% charge. And then about 10 minutes into the drive, it shot up to saying I was gonna end up at 52% when I got here. And then sure enough, the closer I get, creeps down, and as soon as I pull in, it ticks down to 42%. So obviously this is my first road trip. I don't have a lot of details. I don't really understand how that works, if it's trying to learn the efficiency on the route better, or if it's just the way it does it, I don't know. A couple of the other spots had some similar issues. But that light is pretty creepy, isn't it? It's like the start of a horror movie, right? I mean, it's just a few minutes before midnight here, pretty close to the border. In fact, a sheriff's officer saw me walking around and getting some of my steps in, stopped right in the road, just dead in the road right there, for about 20 or 30 seconds, just staring at me, and then drove off. So I'm literally the only one here, though. There's like nobody out here. I think there's a trucker that just pulled into the hotel that's nearby. I could see how some people would not feel safe at this location. I don't have any problems with that here, but I can see how a lot of people would be. And I'm not gonna lie, that light is really just annoying. So far though, this is the first stop that I've been to that actually has trash cans at it. Something I haven't seen before. Very quickly realized most places don't have them, and that's kind of annoying. So yeah, I forget where the next stop is. It's like Ozark, Texas, or I think I'm getting the name wrong. But it's about 2.5 hours away, and then I'll be in San Antonio. So I'll catch you at the next stop. So when I was at Van Horn charging station, it said I only needed to get to 92% to be able to make it to Ozona. I kept calling it Ozark. It's Ozona. 14%. So I went ahead and charged up to 98%, which is like another 6%. When I left Van Horn at 98%, it said I was going to have 19%. So I had a little bit of extra buffer. By the time I got about halfway to Ozona, which is about Fort Stockton, it said I was going to have 8%. So I'd already lost 11%, and I wasn't about to get below zero. I know there's a little bit of range after zero and whatnot, but it obviously was not estimating the charge and the usage correctly. I mean, it could be also that the speed limit's 80 miles an hour, which, you know, they say over 70, it starts, I've noticed that the efficiency in the range starts to die down a little bit. So I just stopped at Fort Stockton for about 10 minutes. Got, you know, I forget how much percentage. It says I'm going to get to Ozona with 32% now. So I'm just going to get back on the same track. It's just one extra stop. I actually needed to use the bathroom anyway, so it worked out. Had a little snack. It's about 2:30 a.m. right now. So I'm going to get back on track. It still rerouted me to Ozona since I don't have enough power to get to Junction, Texas. I wasn't going to stay here for that long. But I'll do a pretty big charge at Ozona, whatever it says I need to do just to get to San Antonio. And then after San Antonio, there's only one stop in a place called Kingsville, Texas. So we'll take a look and see how some of the range does. A little anxiety, I suppose, range anxiety. It's more just kind of monitoring and watching it and seeing how it works. It's obviously not calculating the actual efficiency properly. I don't know if that is something it'll learn in time, or it's just making assumptions of driving habits that aren't accurate, at least what I'm experiencing on the road. You know, first road trip. These are things I'm going to learn. So not a big deal, just 10 minutes. I had to use the bathroom anyway, so I'm already unplugged, actually, recording this. So I'm going to get back on the road and see what happens when you get to Ozona. It says 32% is what I'll be at. We'll see what I'm really at when I get there. So after about 15 hours of driving, just about 15 hours, 15 minutes or so, I got to San Antonio. I decided to stop at a charger that was a little bit sooner than what the Tesla app was showing me. Ended up pulling into a Chick-fil-A parking lot at some kind of mall. Just went back to sleep. Had my bed set up and everything, and chilled for about an hour and a half. Woke up, walked into Chick-fil-A and had breakfast. It doesn't get much better than that. And then came over here to the supercharger that's pretty close to the Chick-fil-A. Started charging as I cleaned up and cleaned some of the bugs off the car and looked at the map, figured out where I'm going and whatnot. And then hit the road. It looks like I'll be going to Kingsville. And after Kingsville, then I can go all the way down to either Boca Chica or the Isla Blanca Park. I'll probably go straight to Boca Chica because that's Highway 4 goes all the way down there, and it's not super easy to get to from Isla Blanca. It's like 45 minute drive, something crazy like that, just because of the river right there. Maybe take a look and see the Starship 28 and Booster 10 that's stacked ready for the flight tomorrow. They don't have the FAA license yet, but everything seems to be, you know, approved. They approved SpaceX's own investigation. They've concluded their own you know, investigation into it, so it's just kind of a formality at this point. Hopefully it goes off Thursday. Some of the weather looks like it could be a little bit worse Friday or Saturday. If they get delayed, it could get delayed a few more days. We'll see. So all in all, not too bad. It worked out so far. All right, Texas is huge. I mean, we all know. It's no secret. 2/3 of my trip is done, but I still have 1/3 to go, and it's still all in Texas, but now I gotta go south. So yeah, it's a fun trip so far. All right, see you on the next one.
So the only other thing I ran into was I had to wait at one destination stop. I was in Kingsville. It was just one time that I actually had to sit and wait for a spot to charge. It's the only time it's ever happened, but it makes sense because I was going out there for a special event. So there was a lot of people traveling to Brownsville. It's kind of a remote area. There's really only one way to get to Brownsville, and that's going south through Texas. So everybody's kind of on the same route. And there's a lot of crossover between people that are interested in Teslas and people that are interested in SpaceX for obvious reasons. So there's quite a few Teslas out there. So all of us were traveling down there, and yeah, I made this little video here.
So I'm almost all the way down to Boca Chica, and I'm stopped at that last spot on Kingsville before you get to like the last spots down by Brownsville, and there's a couple chargers close around there. I think it looks like I was going to be about 3% short from getting there, so I had to stop here, and there was a line of 4 people ahead of me. All the spots were taken here, and a couple people were in line. It seemed like there was kind of a scattered grouping, and so I wasn't sure where to go, so I just pulled behind one other car, and then somebody else pulled up behind them to let them know they were ahead, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going after every other car I saw here, but there wasn't really a line. Now there is. Now you can see they actually got a group of people standing talking about the launch that's coming up in Starbase, and they actually got a makeshift line going on, so they're a little bit smarter and more organized than I was. But I'm only about 2.5 hours away. 2 hours and 20 minutes or so. Yeah, I'll probably not get all the way charged. I'll just get enough to where I can get down there, and then I can charge at one of the stations down there. Looks like there's 3 somewhat close by, so I can always charge at one of those. It looks like all 3 of those have spots open too, so at least that's not that big of a deal. So yeah, that's the first time I've run into a situation where I've had to wait. I'm assuming that means they charge idle fees here too, but it makes sense. I mean, everybody's coming down for the ITF-3 flight, you know, for the Starship 28 Booster 10 that's about to go up hopefully tomorrow morning. So everybody's just showing up in their Teslas, needing a little bit of juice to get all the way down there.
And so, you know, I met some people there that were hanging out that were also going to Starbase as well. I only stayed there for a few minutes to charge just to get up enough juice to get down to Brownsville. But it's the only time in the entire trip there and back, and ever since then, that I've had to actually wait for a stall. Otherwise, it's pretty rare to have them even half full, at least on my travels so far.
All right, I'm just a few minutes away from Brownsville. Made it all the way here. It's gonna be a hair over 24 hours total drive time. I'm already over 24 hours. I am kind of running on empty. My car's not, I am. 24 hours, you know, I can do about 20 to 21. It's a stretch, but I can do it. 24, and I normally need to stop, and I had to stop this time. Plus the weather was kind of cruddy in the morning in San Antonio. It was pretty foggy. I think the dew point was like 97 or 92, something pretty high, where it wasn't raining, but just driving made my window full of water. So that was fun. And yeah, I'm wearing my my hat and sunglasses because I I haven't stopped anywhere to fix the Jowua Model X sunscreen. So this sun's bearing down on me, and it's over 90 out. Humidity is actually nice. It makes the air conditioner feel better and works easier, because the air conditioning only cares about the temperature. It doesn't care about the feels like temperature. That's something that pretty much anybody from Arizona knows the difference. When somebody says, oh yeah, it feels like 100 out there, well, it actually is 100 or 110 here, you know. So it's kind of nice. But yeah, the sun's kind of baking my head a little bit. I do have the clear tint on the full windshield, which blocks about 64% heat rating, so that helps a little bit. But still, it's just kind of like a low level simmer, if you will. So pop the hat on indoors. I may have mentioned earlier, I'm pretty confident I can get that sunshade to stay up without much of a problem. I just need to get something. Once I get that fixed, I'll probably record a little clip here, but I think it's going to be a simple fix. Just not with what I have in the car, that's all. All right, well, it looks like I'm getting close. I only charged up at the Kingsville location enough to get me to Brownsville, so I'm gonna, as much as I want to go right to the orbital launch tower, I'm gonna charge up a little bit more, because I have a feeling tonight and tomorrow morning it might get really busy at the charges there if there's a lot more people coming last minute. And I'll use that time to kind of clean up the car, get the bugs off the windshield, stuff like that. Plus the Brownsville supercharger is level 3, so it's, you know, it's pretty quick, and it's not shared like a level 2 where you're splitting the power between two vehicles when they're all maxed out. So that's positive. So I'll get that charged up. Probably only do it to like the regular 80, since I'm going to be there for a day or two, depending on if launch goes. Just a few minutes ago, I think about 20 minutes ago, SpaceX announced they got the FAA launch license. So that's the last thing they were waiting for. They got the maritime evacuation, the village evacuation. They got everything lined up. So they're ready to go. If weather's good tomorrow, which it looks like it should be, they'll be going up at 7 a.m. Central Time, which I don't know what that means to anybody else where you guys are at. I still don't understand how you guys, most of the nation still for some reason pretends like they can alter time twice a year, every year. Boomers. All right, well, I'm excited. We're almost there.
There was one time on my way back, I felt pretty confident that, hey, if I had a problem and I guessed wrong or estimated wrong, and I was trying to outsmart the Tesla app in the car, that if I needed to get towed to a station, whatever, I'm in no rush to get home. If it takes an extra 4 hours to get home or an extra day to get home, not that big of a deal. So on the way home, I went from, I think, I'll have to double check the location, so apologize if I get these wrong, but I think it was in Midland, Texas. I ended up charging a little bit extra. It said I was going to get the Van Horn with like 7% power if I charged up to like 92% or something like that. I ended up charging up to 98% instead. And the whole thing it was doing is it was skipping the stop, and I think it was in Odakos. So there's still another charging stop in between Midland and Van Horn, but it was having me skip that, and it said I was going to end up with 7. And with that whole 10% error issues, I was a little concerned. So I wouldn't say I was anxious or having any real anxiety about the range, but I charged it up for a few more minutes, which any Tesla owner would know that takes kind of a while. Charging from 20 to 80% takes probably about as much time as it does from 80 to 100. So that 92 to 98 range took a few minutes. I ended up with like 2% when I got to Van Horn. It was close. In fact, I remember I took some pictures of it. I was at 2% when I got on the exit ramp, and then slowing down on the exit ramp, it jumped back up to 3. So it was pretty close. I don't know if the Tesla app isn't accounting for elevation or wind or other factors. I'm not 100% sure yet why it was so far off on different percentages. On the way home, there was some severe headwind. In fact, the app even told me that there's severe winds coming from the west. Now, if the app is telling me that, I would assume that it's factoring it in on the range, but I don't know. The other factor too is there's a lot of roads out there in Texas where the speed limit's 80 miles an hour. So I'm doing, 88 miles an hour, like I'm going back to the future. That definitely is a factor in some of the inefficiencies. Whereas the electric vehicles like Teslas are most inefficient at higher speeds, whereas gas cars are more efficient at highway speeds. And just the opposite's true. Lower speeds, the Teslas are extremely efficient, and lower speeds, like in town travels, when gas cars have its lowest miles per gallon rating, right, for range. So I don't know if the app is actually taking into effect or into account the actual, weather conditions or elevation differences. But either way, it was pretty far off. Had I left Midland, assuming I would get to Van Horn with 7% without charging a little bit extra, I would have been at zero for about 8 or 9 miles, which might have even been okay because there's quite a few people on YouTube that have tested ranges past zero, and there seems to be quite a bit of juice left after the fact. Just like when you hit empty on a gas car, you still got some ways to go. So I probably would have been okay. If I truly did have any range anxiety about that, I could just as easily have stopped at that midway point for like 5 minutes and just splashed and go. Got a little bit of power for like 5 minutes, and that'd have been perfectly fine. But I was wanting to push it. I wanted to test it, and that was kind of the whole point.
Right. Slowed down to 70 miles an hour. It says 14%. I'm just gonna like trail this semi. Might have to draft him here in a minute. But slowing down, I got up to, it thinks I'm gonna end up with 3%, but I'm sure they'll go back down to 2 pretty soon. So yeah, this will be a fun 20 minutes coming up here. All right, I'm almost to the Van Horn supercharger, and I stopped to grab a bite to eat at Subway about halfway between the last stop, which I think was Midland, and Van Horn. And I forget the town name I was in, but there's a charger that was there. I skipped it. I figured I'd go ahead and trust the Tesla system this time. There is some pretty severe winds. In fact, the Tesla map all the way up until just a couple minutes ago for, gosh, 3, 4, about 5.5 hours, told me there was strong winds coming from the west, and I'm traveling west. I can feel it. So I don't know if it was taking into factor that or not. And the speed limit's 80, so I'm doing like 84, 85 most of the way out here. And I'm watching the percentage just drop. When I stopped at that halfway point to grab some Subway, it had estimated I think I was going to have like 9% left. I'm like, oh man, I really want to stop and just get like an extra 5 or 10% right now. I think I was at like 64% or something like that. And I said, you know what, I'm going to chance it. I've seen some other YouTubers do these range tests, or even when they get to zero, they got a little bit extra range, a little bit more miles to go, sometimes kind of a lot. I don't want to chance that, but at the same time, I'm trying to feel a little bit more confident in understanding the miles, my mileage per watt hour. With the wind, normally, like on all these highway miles, even doing 80, I'm in the high 300s, like either 340, 350, or like when it's 80, 85 miles an hour, 360, 370, somewhere around there. Well, for most of this leg since the last charge in Midland, it was close to 600. It was 600 for a while. I think it dipped down to 580. So it's definitely less efficient, not only because I'm driving fast, but the wind's also fighting me. So I got down to 2%, and I'm like, okay, I'm not panicking yet, but now I'm down to 70 miles an hour in an 80 mile an hour zone. The wind warning actually went away, and it does feel like the wind kind of stopped, and it jumped up to saying I'm gonna have 3% left. So status right now is I have 12% charge left, it says I have to go another 17 miles and I'm going to end up with 3%. So you can still tell that's pretty inefficient, but it's still, you know, I'm driving kind of fast at 70, and it's still a little windy. It's just not the wind advisory on anymore, and my car's not being tossed around. I should be good, but this is going to be the closest I've cut it so far. And it'll feel good because, man, plugging into a level 3 supercharger that does the 250 kilowatt hour charging from 3 or 2%, I mean, I'm going to get full juice on that. That's going to charge it pretty quick. Unfortunately, though, it's another pretty long stop to get to Deming, New Mexico, so I think it's going to have me charge up in a 90+% range. I might be there an hour, which is fine. I'm kind of exhausted. I've been driving almost nonstop since the soccer game ended in Dallas at like 11:20, and it's noon right now. It's exactly noon, so I've been driving for about 12 and a half hours without much sleep. I did stop and take a quick a snooze, just because I could hardly keep my eyes up, but I was pushing a little bit too hard. I wasn't getting drowsy or anything. I was just getting trouble seeing, and it was still dark out, so I figured I'd take a little bit, like about an hour, and wait until kind of dusk or until dawn comes around and get a little bit better vision. So yeah, wish me luck. I'm still, now I'm down to 11%, but I'm still estimated to end up at the charging station at 3%. Being that it's only about 15 miles to go, 11%, even with it being super inefficient, I think I'm going to go back up to the speed limit, so I'll probably pump it up to 80. Hopefully those aren't some famous last words. Wish me luck. I will say one of the things I'm not a big fan of is the Autopilot. You know, obviously I've never used it before. I'm just getting used to it now. I'll be paying attention and it gives me a little warning. Pay attention to the road. I'm like, what are you looking at? And then I know you have to keep the hands on the wheel every few seconds or so. But apparently the way I keep my hands on the wheel, it didn't think they were on the wheel, and it actually turned it off. Which I think is, I think after like 3 of those, it disables it for the rest of the trip or something like that. I forget all the rules behind it, but I'm literally holding onto the steering wheel with both hands, and it thinks I wasn't and turns it off, and I just start slowing down all of a sudden. That's kind of annoying. I don't really find myself using Autopilot, enhanced Autopilot, or full self-drive, but I was just trying it out, and so far, strikes 1 and 2. Get on that, Elon.
One of the more interesting things about having a Tesla on a road trip is being able to sleep in the vehicle. Specifically, the thing I love about it is you can leave the AC on all night long. That was a game changer. Unlike a gas car, you'd have to leave the vehicle running to be able to run the air conditioner, or just open the windows and kind of sweat it out. The Tesla is actually quite efficient when it's running the air conditioner. The first full night I slept in the Model X, it was about 7 hours, and it used about 5% electricity. Now, granted, one of the funny things is when I woke up and went into whatever truck stop I was staying at or whatever, there's a rather large puddle underneath the front of the car. But it worked very well. I ended up buying a mattress for the Tesla. It fits all the 4 major ones: the Y, the S, the X, and the 3. It's from For My Tesla. It's a travel sleeper. It's about $300 or so. The thing I really like about it is it's not just an air mattress, which isn't very comfortable, and it's not like a solid foam mattress, which can be comfortable if you get the right firmness, but it's kind of bulky and big. It's a mixture of both. It's a hybrid. The interesting thing about it for me is my personal opinion, for my preference, is when I unplug the holes in it, it sucks in air, and I don't need to push any more air into it. It comes with an air pump, so if you need to put more air in it or take some out, you can. But it actually feels the perfect type of firmness that I want just by letting it inflate on its own. It takes about 2 or 3 minutes. Because I'm traveling by myself, I never really needed to deflate it and roll it up and store it. But if somebody needed to, that air pump makes it super easy. You kind of just, I would say, just kind of open up all the holes to it, lay on it, let all the air decompress, and then plug in the vacuum and just let that suck out all the air for the next 2 or 3 minutes until it's small enough to roll up. But that was a very impressive thing to be able to sleep in the vehicle and be comfortable at the same time. So that worked honestly a lot better than I thought. The size of the Model X, very similar to the other three models. It just probably has a little bit more headroom, but the length for legroom is about the same in all four of the vehicles. And for me, I'm 6'2", and I had enough room to stretch out. I had enough room to stretch out. If I wanted to roll on my side or kick my legs up, I could. If I was, I don't know, 6'5", we're talking maybe like another 3 inches, maybe I would start hitting, the seat and the back of the tailgate. In which case, then I would still probably get another 5 or 6 inches if I wanted to move the front passenger and driver seat up for the extra space, which in my case I didn't. I left it right where I have it in my driving position. Some of the things I experienced though on the road, this isn't really about the bed or the Tesla, but just kind of an FYI if anybody else tries it. I had a lot of friends tell me that this gas station called Buc-ees is like epic and awesome, and I have to stop there. And it was pretty cool. I mean, it's just massive. They have pretty much everything you ever want. They have plenty of gas stations. There's a couple things they were missing. One of the key things to keep in mind is they do not allow overnight camping. Most of the Buc-ees that I stopped at had like 200 or 300 parking spaces in addition to like 120 gas station stalls. And yet at night, the place is completely empty because they don't allow people to camp overnight. The reasoning I understand, they'd probably have to hire security to monitor it if they want to have that peace of mind, or to keep people that maybe live in their cars, and maybe some other issues from people staying there for long periods of time. That was kind of a bummer. The first time I stopped at a Buc-ees, I was really disappointed. I stopped, I don't know, every few hours. Pretty much every time I stopped to charge, I would get a squeegee to clean off my windshield because I really hate dirty windshields, especially on long road trips. But Buc-ees do not have squeegees for windshields. The best gas station on the planet, supposedly, they don't allow overnight camping. They don't have squeegees. And although this doesn't affect me, it's a little weird. They ban truckers. Truckers cannot stop there. Doesn't matter if they have the space. No truckers allowed. It's kind of three strikes for the place. As awesome as it is and all the things that's going for it, I was not a big fan of Buc-ees because of that. As an additional point, I'll show some pictures of what the car looked like at night. I ended up only having the window coverings that I talked about earlier. So I had the sunshade that goes up on top of the top part of the windshield. I also had a sunshade for the front. And then I had those two little ones for the tops of the Falcon wing doors. But the passenger and driver side window, the back Falcon side windows, the back hatch, I just left in the open. Now I did tint my vehicle. So I have 35% tint on the front driver and passenger window. And then of course Tesla has the other windows in the back all stock. So it wasn't by any means dark tinting. But at night, it's kind of hard to see in there. And what I found is, especially if I parked under or really close to a light in the parking lot, it was almost impossible unless you really walked right up to the window, covered your eyes and was looking inside. Or let's say I had something bright on inside the vehicle, which is pretty rare because even my phone's not that bright when I'm trying to go to sleep. So my opinion is, I know a lot of YouTubers that blog about traveling and sleeping in their Tesla, kind of promote and sell these window coverings that cover every square inch of every single window, including all the little tiny ones. My opinion is I don't think you need those. I tried my first trip without this one, and I figured if I wanted them for any future trips, I'd buy them. But it was pretty private, in my opinion, the way it was. Obviously I had the coverings on the top, which blocked all the light coming from straight down in, and then anything on the side basically ended up acting like a reflecting mirror. So it worked out quite well. So that's just my opinion. I don't think those are really necessary, but try it out. If you have a Tesla and you want to just save some money, try a first trip without, and then if you disagree, then buy them. So that's pretty much the video. I'll admit I had a little difficulty getting this all done. It took a couple weeks. It was just not something I anticipated having this much work and effort to put into to kind of explain a few things that happened on the trip. I took a couple video clips that I shared along the road, but ultimately I just ended up needing to scrap a lot of this and kind of turn it into more of a narrative type discussion. And that's really not I don't really find that too enjoyable when I'm making these YouTube clips. So I'll probably do it a little bit differently on other trips. Some of the basics, the summary of it all. I did the math when I got home as far as how much I paid in supercharging costs and how much that would have compared in gas. And when I pulled into my driveway and got home, the mileage was exactly 3,400 miles. So the whole trip was 3,400 miles, and I used exactly 1,200 kilowatt hours. So the math ended up being a little bit easy on that part. I just needed to make some adjustments for how much the electricity cost was, which is all baked into the price. But then I also needed to figure out what it would be if I actually took this trip on a gas car. Some of the things that may differ when you do this or you see gains or not is my last four vehicles were all either turbocharged vehicles or high compression vehicles, and I live in Arizona, so I always got 91 octane. So that's the highest you can get in Arizona. If there's 93, I'd get 93. Not everybody does that. So if you're doing 87, it's a little bit cheaper gas. My cost along the route, Texas generally has some pretty decent prices for supercharge per kilowatt hour. So that factored into it. So your mileage may vary depending on where you are, how much you pay for gas, and what kind of gas you get. In the end, what the math worked out to, as I'm checking my notes here, it worked out to about supercharger being about 50% cheaper than gas. So I only saved about half as much money as I would have paid for with 91 octane in like one of my other cars than I did charging the Model X and driving that at highway speeds. Another note, something that's a lot of people don't think about, electric vehicles generally are least efficient driving highway speeds. And I noticed that, as you saw when I was talking about trying to slow down to get to that Van Horn supercharger and some of the issues I was having. The faster you drive over 70, 80, 88 miles an hour, the more electricity you're using per mile, because it takes a little bit more power to keep and sustain that, to fight the wind and everything. Whereas gas vehicles, it's just the opposite. That's where I would see my best miles per gallon is on highway speeds. And it's flipped for in town, whereas gas cars are a little bit less efficient. But in town, the electric vehicles end up massively outperforming a gas-powered car on a price per mile basis for energy. So it ended, like I said, it ended up being about 50%. So that's the other little interesting piece. You take the electric vehicle and put it in an environment where it's least efficient, and you compare that with a gas vehicle where it's most efficient, and the gas vehicle is still twice as much on a per mile basis for cost. So I found that somewhat interesting.